Hi, and welcome to Getting Your Animations into a Game Engine. Throughout this demo, you're going to hear me talking about Rabbit, which is the character that I'm working on, and of course, you're going to use your own naming conventions appropriate to the sort of character that you are using. But mine, you can hear me saying Rabbit, and that's reflective of the character that I'm working on. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start out in Maya, and I'm going to grab my character and I'm going to turn it around a little bit and just make sure that everything is okay. I'm going to scrub through the animation, press play, make sure it's animated. I'm going to go down into my layers and I'm going to turn on visibility for the bones, and then I'm going to go to Windows Outliner, and I'm going to select the bones either by selecting the root and the model in the viewport, or you can go to the outliner and hold control and just select these. But we're going to be exporting the skeletal mesh first, and that's the bones and the model. So you should go to Window Settings Preferences, Plugin Manager, and run a search for FBX. Make sure that that's working, and it is. Then we're going to go to File, Export Selection. And I'm going to, the most important thing here is just make sure that animation is turned off because we're exporting the skeletal mesh first. And I'll label it Rabbit Skeletal Mesh or something that makes sense. Okay, and I'm going to press Export Selection. Make sure animation is off, Export Selection. Once again, just the bones and the model, bones and mesh. Don't worry about those. In this case, that's not going to affect what we're doing here. You'll see that happen a few times. Then the next thing is for the animation, I'm going to grab only the bones. Select from the root, File, Export Selection. Also in FBX, only this time make sure that animation is checked. And I need to back up here. I've forgotten what the exact time is. I believe it's 24 frames, but I'm just going to double check it here. So I'm going to look and go, okay, yep, 24 frames, 30 frames a second. And we're going to go back to File, Export Selection. And the difference here is, once again, we want animation on and we want that bake animation checked. And we're going to do our start time frame 1, end time frame 24. And then we're going to export from there as an FBX. I'll call this Rabbit Run. Once again, you call your model, your thing, whatever it is appropriate to what you're doing. I'm not going to worry about these errors here. So when you open up Unreal, you want to select third person. The third person blueprint is what we're going to be working with. And when you open up Unreal, you're going to see your character down on the right. It's the third person. And I'm going to go down to the base. I'm going to go down to my content browser at the bottom and click on content. So I'm down at my base here. Hold my right mouse button down, choose new folder. And I'm going to type Rabbit files for this, just a place so I can organize things. I'm going to click into that folder and I'm going to go to import all down in the content browser, and I'm going to select my Rabbit skeletal mesh. Again, yours is called whatever is appropriate to what you're working on. You can work with defaults here. The main thing is just make sure that animation is turned off. You don't need a skeleton yet. This thing actually will be the skeleton that you're going to end up using. Hit import all and you're going to get 5 different files here. So with these, don't worry about them. They're just the physics, the material, just whatever is related to that. I'm going to make a new folder, right mouse button, new folder, make a Rabbit animations folder and click into that. I'm going to choose my Rabbit run animation and I'm going to click on the skeleton here with my FBX import and choose that Rabbit skeletal mesh that I just imported. Make sure exported time is set for animation length and then bring it in. Okay, so if I click on this now, I can see that I've got my little character running around. He's not working on the controller yet, so we're going to fix that now. So I'm going to go back up, right mouse button, animation, animation blueprint, and at the top I'm going to say anim instance, and at the bottom I'm going to say Rabbit skeletal mesh skeleton and say OK. I'm going to rename this Rabbit underscore BP for blueprint. And this is what's going to contain all the animation that I'm going to put on the controller. If I double click this right now, I get a little event graph, and in the center you see the final animation pose, but nothing's happening. I have no animations hooked up yet. So I'm going to pull this window, the third person blueprint window, off to the side, just off to the side there, and I'm going to go back into there and I'm going to drag my rabbit run animation into that window there, the rabbit blueprint window, and it makes a new node. I'm going to connect the little character icon down on the bottom, and I'm going to hit compile, and you can see now it's running. Once again, still not hooked up yet to the controller. So we're going to do that now. So you can either go down to the third-person blueprints, and there's the third-person controller. Another way to find it is select the controller in the viewport, go to third-person character, browse to asset in the world outliner, and then it shows up and you see where it is. So I'm going to double-click that third-person controller, and that opens it up to its event graph here. On the upper left, you see something that says Mesh Inherited. You want to select that, and that opens up the options you need on the right. And the first one that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure Mesh Inherit is selected. I'm going to go to Mesh, and where it says Skeletal Mesh, I want to swap the one that you see in the viewport for my little rabbit character. So I'm going to click on where it says Mannequin, and I'm going to find Rabbit Skeletal Mesh, and there it is right there. Then we're going to hook up the animations, and under Anim class, I'm going to grab my rabbit blueprint with all that animation data in it. And then now if I hit save, maybe compile, you can see, just to be safe, you can see now, oh, I forgot something. See, he's very tiny in the viewport, and if your thing isn't sized correctly, which it likely won't be, you'll have to fix it. Go back to Mesh Inherited, open up that third-person controller again, and on the right, under Transform, go to Scale. And I'm going to scale up. I'm showing you here what it looks like next to this, and I'm going to scale up in X, Y, and Z. I'm going to scale it to 9. And I'm going to see how it looks. So you can see it's scaling up in those different axes over there on the right. Looks okay. I might go a little bit larger, go to 10. And there's other ways to do this too, but this is an easy way here. So once again, we are in the third-person character controller. Right now we're in the event graph, and there it is. And now if I hit save, click out of this, and I press play, you can see I've got my run in there with the controller. So if I use WASD and spacebar for jump, I can run around with it. Now there is no idle connected, there's no jump to this. It's a very simple way of just putting in your character running. And the point of this is, when you make an animation, you want to be able to test it in a game. This isn't making a game yet, this is just checking it to make sure that how it looks in the game, how it's going to work. If you could do this with an idle and you could just sort of sit there and turn the character around and see how that idle's looking, you could, just do the same thing for a cycling attack. So anyway, this is a simple way. Any animation that you do should be tested in the game, and you should have the capability and understanding of this. And here you go. I hope you found this helpful.